Okay, welcome everyone to our meeting organized by the European Network in Solidarity with Ukraine. I'll just say briefly a few words about the whole network and the idea about the meetings we're going to organize, because it's not the first, but one of the first meetings highlighting Ukrainian social movements and progressive organizations. In the chat, I'll put the social media of ANSU, whoever is interested and doesn't know our work yet. We were established soon after the full-scale invasion, Russian full-scale invasion in Ukraine started. We are a loose network of political parties, trade unions, social organizations, or individuals who are in solidarity with Ukraine from a left or progressive, in general, progressive perspective. So there's a lot of work we already done through these almost 3 years during the invasion. As I said, I put the links to the social media and our website in the chat, so you can see yourself. I won't take too much time because we have guests today, and I'll just say just a few words about the whole idea of this meeting. Interestingly, we are in the International Volunteer Day today, so I think it's a good. Actually, a very good opportunity to talk about things we're going to talk today. So what I want to say, there's a lot of things going on the front line in Ukraine, a lot of going on the international politics related to Ukraine. All of this is, of course, among our interests. But solidarity with Ukraine can be shown in many ways. I would say, like raising money for humanitarian or military cases in Ukraine, organizing pressure for more aid for Ukraine in our countries, fighting for the sealing of the sanctions regime against Russia and Belarus. And we are trying to do all of this to a greater or lesser extent as ANSU members in different countries. But we believe there is another way of showing solidarity and expressing solidarity with Ukraine, and is to present the progressive left social movements in Ukraine, to show Ukraine as a country of social struggles and social contradictions, and just to highlight the movements in that country, and showing it's a country of, a lot of differences, a lot of movements that are interesting. We already did some of the meetings like that with the feminist organizations in Ukraine, with the Prima Dia student movement, also highlighting the story of progressive leftist anarchist Ukrainian prisoner of war Maxim Budkiewicz, who has been released from Russian captivity recently. But we want to continue this. So this meeting is with our friends from Street.Aid.Daily from Odessa, which they will say about their work more in a second. But I just want to say, in the future, we are going to organize a lot of meetings like that, either focusing on different organizations or highlighting a bigger problem like the Roma rights in Ukraine, disabled rights in Ukraine, and many other topics. We are hoping that many people are gonna join our meetings and also see the videos and see as Ukraine as a diverse and interesting country, not just a place that they only view through the current situation. And basically, that's all I want to say as an introduction. I just want to mention that we still don't have all the registered people, but for people who registered, we have people from ranging from Taiwan, Brazil, Norway, Spain, USA. What else do I see?
France.
Germany, France, of course, Canada, and Sweden. I don't know if I forgotten any countries, but I think that's Italy. But that's the most that I remember now. So that's all from me. now Patrick will chair the meeting and interview our guests. After that, we also have space for a discussion or for questions from the audience. So, Patrick, the floor is yours.
Okay. Thank you, Shimon. Hello, everybody. Thank you, Kostya, from Street.Aid.Daily, from Odessa, to be here and to give us time, because I know the situation in Odessa, as in Ukraine, is very difficult. Okay, my first question is very easy. Tell us about what is Street.Aid.Daily, what is your activities, and what is your history, how you build this network of solidarity.
First of all, hi there, everyone. Nice to be here. Yeah, there's supposed to be 2 speakers today from our side, but my friend David sadly could not stay with us because of the power outages, blackouts that are happening because of the Russian attacks, recent Russian attacks. So yeah, I will be speaking alone today. Street.Aid.Daily started just as a reading book club. We read political like theory, anarchist, socialist stuff. And then I was at the time when the book club started, I was a social worker working with homeless people. So I tried to channel like the political knowledge that we developed into working with homeless in my social worker activities, and connected my friends to those activities. And in 2021 we started our mutual aid collective, primarily working with homeless people, in Odessa. It was like 5 people at that time.
Okay, thank you. Tell us about the situation in Odessa, about social exclusion, poverty, and the economic situation of people in Odessa today.
Well, yeah, the situation is pretty tough because it was tough before the full-scale invasion, and it is tougher after the full-scale invasion. We have a lot of houses destroyed because of Russian attacks, specifically in Odessa and all over the Ukraine. We have eternally displaced people coming to Odessa from eastern regions and from southern regions, and they have no place to live here. It's hard to find a place to rent, especially if they don't have the means and they don't have the work, and the government like supports them, but that's usually not enough to find like a stable housing for a lot of people. So a lot of people, a lot of eternally displaced people end up living on the street. That's the situation that's developing currently. But we had a huge homeless population before the full-scale invasion. It's mostly, again, people who are struggling to pay rent, who are struggling to find housing for themselves. And they end up on the street.
And precisely, how you can tell us what the people you help? For example, in the video of comments about your activities, I see that a veteran of the war live in station, in street, because he don't got money from the state. Do you tell us about what population live in the streets precisely?
Yeah, there are some people who were in the army and now live on the street. It was like that since 2014, since the war started. Lots of veterans after the discharge ended up on the street because of PTSD. They developed drug problems or problems with alcohol. Unable to cope, they ended up on the street. And now we have a little bit different situation since 2022. A lot of homeless people actually are enlisted in the army. yeah, those who have like papers like ID and other documents. Yeah, and a lot of them, like after being discharged, returning to Odessa, they still end up living on the street because they don't have enough finances after serving for a year or two to find themselves housing. Yeah, so they end up on the street. We help like different variety of people. Yeah, there are certainly veterans, there are homeless women, homeless LGBT people, people of color. Yeah, so the variety is pretty big.
But what is very curious in the video of comments that you help these people, but also you learn to or you propose to them to draw on the paper, to make drawing, to have an art, if I can say, an artistic activity. Can you tell us about this part of your activity?
Yeah, we cooperated with the artist collective. It no longer exists, but basically two friends of ours, they came up with the idea of like drawing with homeless people and then using their drawings to print t-shirts and postcards, and then sell those t-shirts and postcards to finance our activity. So basically we try to incorporate homeless people into helping themselves, like before doing these artistic activities, we told them that we're planning on using the drawings as the prints on t-shirts and postcards and all that stuff. Yeah, so it was basically, we were basically trying to find a way to include them into our activities, like to find a way to make them more active, like for them not to just come to us every week to receive help, but for them to help themselves.
Yeah, this is a very important part, I think, of your activities. Okay, and we see also in this video, I recommend to all people to see the video in chat. I put the link on YouTube to see the video. We see that you manage a space, a free space, from long time, I think, from many years. Can you tell us about this space, what you manage, a self-organized space, if I can say?
Yeah, it is called Serze 2, which is like an abandoned shipyard factory. It's been abandoned since like since the 90s. Nothing was happening there. At some point, like artists started like renting or squatting rooms in that abandoned factory to create their own like workshops where they created art. Yeah, and some of our members became a part of that community in 2020. Yeah, and since then we kind of tried to develop again like connections between artists, again like the idea of drawing with homeless and using their drawings came about at the Serza. Yeah, so it's basically like a huge space to meet people like artists and activists, and again like people who serve in the military, and like to I don't know, like exchange ideas. A lot of them are leftists, people who live there and work there, but not all of them.
Okay.
Yeah.
And another question is, which kind of contact you have with other leftist network in Ukraine? You can tell us about your relationship with other organization or network in Ukraine, and which one?
Yeah, there are a lot of other leftist organizations that we work with. We work with Solidarity Collectives. They send us like winter clothes. We received like a huge package from them, like winter jackets, warm socks, sweatshirts, and stuff like that. Yeah, they help us like with hand warmers, a lot of like humanitarian aid they provide to us. that's Solidarity Collectives. There is a feminist organization called Fem Solution. Again, they help us with humanitarian support, sending us like underwear for homeless women. Like we specifically target helping homeless women like in our work. There is a film festival called Filma that's happening right now. It's like, again, like a feminist film festival. There are a lot of smaller like feminist organizations that help us, like Fembilkis. And there are just a lot of activists all around Ukraine coming to our outreach on Sundays and helping us. Like it's an open space, anybody can come and help us, like cook food or bring, I don't know, hot coffee. Yeah.
Okay, I have two last questions, and one is more political, if I can say. The first thing I see is that a few months before, a meeting of Prima Dia was attacked by a far right in Odessa. And maybe you can tell us about some more about the situation with far right, if you have problem with them, and so on and so on.
Yeah, that event with Prima Dia happened in May of this year, where the presentation of their zine was attacked by like far right hooligans. They were really just kids. They were like all 19, 20 years old. The situation with far right in Ukraine was and is pretty bad. And we work with people who were in a lot of like anti-fascist circles before the war and still are anti-fascists. So they know like firsthand experience like of actually like fighting with far right, like protecting events from far right groups, protecting like, I don't know, film screenings or like presentations from far right people. Yeah, so like the situation with far right is pretty bad, and there is like a new generation growing. Like I mentioned, those people that attacked the presentations, they were like 19 and younger. So with the popularity of such organizations as like Right Sector, they like growing the number of supporters among the young people, like people who are 14 and older. Yeah, so there is certainly will be a new generation of far right people. Yeah, sadly.
Thank you. I forgot to tell that to audience that the Prima Dia is a Ukrainian Indian student. To know. Okay, my big political question is how Ukraine can get out from this situation, and if the state do nothing about the poverty and social exclusion, what do you think you have to do yourself what is the way to go out from this situation? I don't mean the war. Of course, the war is a big problem for this, but I mean, what's the state? With the state? What we can do? What you can do with the state?
Well, we say that homelessness is a housing issue, first of all. Homeless people end up on the street mostly due to the problems with the housing market, because housing is not available, affordable housing is not available to everyone, sadly, in Ukraine. So I think our main position is that to combat the problem of homelessness is first to build affordable housing, to build free housing, to create programs, that housing first programs that are more effective in helping homeless people than shelter system that exists nowadays. That's like a whole separate conversation about housing first. Yeah, control rent market because the prices keep skyrocketing. People can't afford to pay rent in the country, all over the country. Yeah, that's what the government's supposed to do, really, to combat the homelessness crisis in the country. But it's not really happening. Over the last almost 3 years since the full-scale invasion. And yeah, what the people can do is take the situation in their own hands. Yeah, basically, at least start doing what we are doing, like doing some grassroots activities with homeless people, like learning the problems that homeless people experience, trying to solve those problems. Yeah. I don't know if you know about that, but recently in Ukraine appeared a tenants union, which will be fighting for the rights of tenants. That's also very helpful in preventing homelessness in the country. Yeah, and it's basically like, again, people taking the power in their own hands. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. If people, for me, I have no more question. If people have question or to say something, I give the floor.
Just raise your hands, guys, if anyone has any questions or comments to Kostya. I'll have one later, but I see Dick. So Dick, please.
Thanks very much for that, Kostya. That was very, very useful to hear, very informative. I've got a series of questions, but I'll just do one at a time. The first one is the rise of the far right amongst young people. You mentioned people of 14, 15. What is the far right saying is the problem? I mean, who are they scapegoating? Is it, Russian-speaking Ukrainians? Is it immigrants? Who are the enemy? Because the far right operates with an enemy. Who are they blaming for the situation?
So
That's a
just
good
one question. Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm sorry if Kostya, if that's okay with you, we'll get a few questions. I see Linda also, and then you can answer all together or whatever you want. But I think
No, it's better to answer one at a time.
one at a
because I
time.
will
Okay,
forget-
okay, it's up
forget
to
the
you.
questions.
Please. Okay, sorry. Yeah, go.
Yeah, so about the far right. Yeah, it's a good question. And there is not like a simple answer to that question because far right groups in Ukraine are again pretty different. They again exist on the spectrum. Yeah, but I would say that they find the main enemies in feminist organizations, in LGBT plus organizations. A lot of them try to connect leftist organizations in Ukraine with Russia, try to create those ties. Yeah, basically try to paint any leftist ideology as connected to Russia in some way. Yeah, a lot of them are pushing traditionalist values. So again, like anti-feminist, LGBT plus people. Yeah, so I guess that's the main enemies of those like small far right organizations at the moment are leftists, feminists, and LGBT people.
Thank you, Linda. Please.
Oh, hi. I was going to ask a question that I think you've already answered. Is most of the homelessness caused by Russians destroying the infrastructure? But the question of the fascists, my understanding is that unlike fascists in the rest of the world, the fascists in Ukraine are anti-Russian for obvious reasons. And unfortunately, we have a large left in this country that's also pro-Russian. And that probably feeds their perception that the left is I mean, they're going to attack the left anyway, because that's what fascists do. But that's got to lead to an unfortunate situation. But that's all I guess that's all I should ask right now.
Referring to
sorry,
a country
can
you said
you?
about it's US, of course. Sorry to interrupt because Linda didn't mention she's from US.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, can you like rephrase the question because I did not hear the question there.
Okay.
Slowly
My understanding
speak
is that most of the or all of the fascists in Ukraine are anti-Russian because of the invasion. That's probably okay. So, God, so they're at odds with the rest of the fascists in other countries. All of them are pretty much all pro-Russian. So they don't have any kind of international connections, I don't believe. And unfortunately, in the West, including the US especially, a lot of the so-called left in this country is also pro-Russian. And you can find pro-Russian leftists or so-called Putinists. They're really nothing but damn Duginists as far as I'm concerned. But it's, that's got to feed the perception and provide the rationale for attacking the left. In your country, although I suppose, I mean, that's what fascists do in every country, is attack the left. But that was really all I had to say. And really, I really hope for the best, and that we may be finally seeing the end of this.
Okay, thanks, Linda. More like a comment than a question. Okay, I guess. Wilfred, please.
Already, okay.
Yeah, already.
Wilfried from Frankfurt am Main in Germany. I have a bit different type of question to Kostya. My question is, do you have links to groups, movements, initiatives, and maybe even trade unions in other parts of Europe, either Eastern Europe, neighboring countries, or in Western Europe? Links, and do you get support for your work? Maybe we should try to raise the question with our trade union. There are a lot of progressive, very leftist social workers in at least in Germany, in many circles I know. And some of them are, like Linda said, they tend to be rather campist if they are very leftist. Some, but not everybody. Yeah, I think there are possibilities which we should try to do something. That's all.
Thank you, Kostya, please.
Yeah, to answer that question, we don't really have any connections with trade unions. We have supporters from Europe, but those are mostly like anarchist organizations from Spain, for example. But yeah, we never really had like any connection, yeah, with like workers in initiatives. So I guess like that's the reason for this call. One of the reasons, like to meet a wide variety of people. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Dick, you said you had a series of questions, so you can go with others if you want.
Okay. Well, no, my next question was, Kostya, do you have links with similar initiatives in other parts of Ukraine beyond Odessa? I mean, I imagine that there are, movements for housing, for solidarity with the homeless, etc., in other parts of Ukraine, but is that the case? And do you have links with them? Is there a network across Ukraine of organizations like yours?
Sadly, there isn't a network of those organizations because, yeah, again, before the full-scale invasions, there existed food not bombs in various cities of people feeding the homeless every week, like mostly, again, anarchists and other leftists. But since the full-scale invasion, like most of those people switched to helping the army. So actually there is like only one other organization in Ukraine that worked with the homeless. It's a feminist organization. Maybe you know them, Fembilkis. They are in Lviv. Yeah, they used to do again like feeding the homeless people and elder people on Sundays every week. Yeah, but they stopped doing this. So basically we are the only like leftist organization at the moment in Ukraine that like targets helping the homeless people at the moment. Yeah.
Dick, again, if you have any, or you want to finish the questions, just go, and then I'll have some as well.
I'll just keep going. Kostya, I imagine, I don't know, but do you have any relations to local government? I mean, here, I'm speaking from Spain, by the way. We have a big movement around, renters movement. We've got a housing crisis in Barcelona, not just in Barcelona, but across the whole of the Spanish state. There was a big demonstration here last week of 25,000 people in just around demanding rent controls, demanding controls of housing. Now, this obviously can only be introduced by government or by local council, depending who's got the power. What do you have relations with local government, or is it just another universe that you don't have contact with? That's it.
Yeah, sadly, it's another universe that we don't have contact with. But as I said, our tenants union, Ukrainian tenants union, just appeared like less than 6 months ago. So yeah, they're kind of working in that direction and building those connections. And hopefully we can work with them closer again to address the problem of homelessness at the government level. But again, that's not the work that's happening currently by anyone. Yeah.
Thanks very much.
I think that's all. Okay, so Patrick, please.
Yeah,
Yes, thank you. Kostya, I want to come back to this question of artistic activities of Street.Aid.Daily on your space, your squat here to manage. You even organized some sport activities inside, I see. I think it's very important to say that you have an activity, political activity, you have a social activity, and you have also what I mean, artistic activity, sport activity. You try to organize all the social life in this space. I think it's very important you tell us some details about this.
Yeah, I guess one of the goals of our organization, except for helping the homeless people, is to create the community, leftist community here in Odessa, is to gather as many like leftist people, because mostly, like even a year ago, people didn't really know everyone. Like, yeah, so like we started doing our activities, inviting people to come to our outreach, to our book readings, to our film screenings, to our sports events, to our art practices, just trying to gather all the leftist people in Odessa in the same place again to create connection and to create new leftist people from the people who were like apolitical before through those like communal activities. Yeah, like cooking together and doing art together. Yeah, so that's very important for our collective, just to create like a community.
Now, please.
Yes, sorry, let me introduce briefly myself. I am now a Honk. I'm connected with some leftist groups in Ukraine, particularly with one of the Street.Aid organization, and I also connected with some trade union activists in Germany and other countries. And I have a question for Kostya because I found it's very weird that you mentioned a lot of anarchist organization. I suppose it's not like a Chervony Styak, but how about социальный рух, because as far as I know, there's some members in Odessa, in particular one member who is was working a lot with the homeless people.
Yeah, if we are thinking about the same person, she is a part of our collective. I'm not sure if yeah, but she was in Социальный рух. She's not really active there anymore, but yeah, she's like a part of our collective currently.
And what about David?
Oh yeah, he's also a part
Okay.
of our collective. Yeah, he's not very active in the soцрух anymore, sadly. But yeah, we also again, I think I forgot to mention them, soцрух. We also cooperate with them. We gave lecture at their space this year in February about our activities, about like the ways to solve the homelessness crisis, and yeah. So yeah, we work like with everyone, like anarchists, socialists. Yeah, trying not to be picky because there are not a lot of leftists in Ukraine.
Yes, understandable. It's mostly 100 people, and you know each other, from people like Dudin to fucking Vernik. But okay. Yeah, I just want to clarify because Kosti doesn't mention social ruch, but the most noticeable attacks and the one that happened, and people knew about it in Kiev, was mostly against социальный рух by different right-wing organizations. And to put in context, it's true that there's a lot of young people, particularly ones whose parents are affected by military, naturally tend to develop nationalistic far-right views. But generally speaking, it's really hard to define it. It's a classical fascistic movement with mass support because they're mostly connected to internal affairs, SBU, military. Sometimes it's just military assigns people to fascistic units, sometimes from prisons, like in case of the infamous 3rd Brigade regiment, something like this. And it's was raising questions a lot. As far as I can tell, an impression of my comrades, of people who are inside Ukraine, they're indeed very anti-Russian, but historically speaking, if we go from Karczynski, Arestovich, these are very politically unstable people and opportunists. They started as pro-Russian Eurasians, and then state Russia kind of became, well, shitty to Ukraine, so they also shifted against Russia. So it's really hard to say how these people can develop depending on situation.
Okay, thanks. Anyone else? I have actually some questions I was thinking about, but if anyone from the audience wants to ask, just raise your hand, guys. Kostya, you mentioned the housing crisis. I think it's a very similar situation in the whole Eastern Europe with that problem. It's actually a lot of tenants organization. If you look at the whole region, basically everywhere. I'm from Poland, and in Poland it's a very big issue in terms of both mainstream politics and the activism as well. But I understand you're not an expert, but I was thinking of maybe you can give us a brief information about because thinking of the cause of homelessness, there are various, of course, obviously, as you mentioned, but could you just mention in Ukraine in general how they deal with things like mental issue problems, like addiction to drugs or to alcohol? Is there any state policy on any kind of this issue? Just shortly, I don't expect you to be a specialist on everything, but maybe you have your thoughts on that as well.
Well, I used to be a social worker, as I mentioned in the beginning, so I kind of have like first-hand experience and how all of that works, like from homeless people living on the street. And they want to find housing, and they basically come to a shelter, talk to a social worker there, and begin living in the shelter. And then the social worker realizes that a person has like alcohol issues or drug-related issues, and basically the choice for the person is to go to a rehab. Most of those are pretty religious, usually Orthodox Christian, or to stay in the shelter and promise not to drink, but the first instance they drink, they end up on the street. Basically, that's the whole government like support for homeless people with mental issues and with substance abuse issues. Yeah.
Now, please, because I have a
Yes.
question, but I've finished.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to portrait for picture and details. Look, as you all know, in Eastern Europe, alcoholism is a very major issue, including substance abuse. Kostya mentioned a very interesting thing. It's not very oftenly discussed, but I know about this. Well, I'm usually from Russia, but I also have people in Ukraine, Ukrainians, etc. So generally speaking, social security is mostly in this part of homelessness, drug addiction, alcoholism, and sometimes it is less hospices, like final care, like the person dying of course from cancer, a very horrible thing to see. It's delegated more and more to religious organizations. Obviously, states like Russia, full centralization, full Russian Orthodox Church doing this. In Ukraine, it's different because you have Protestants, Greek Catholic in the organization of Catholical one, Orthodox, which is probably the most one because the population concentrated in central Ukraine, and generally speaking, if we speak about homelessness, shelters, etc., it's is a religious organization or it's some state organization, and this can be very tricky because sometimes it's basically attempt to perform a coerced labor, unfortunately, and there is not so much grassroots movement. I know pretty much about St. Petersburg. Kiev is probably has this, but generally speaking, there is no social network. And Ukrainian state, as you can guess, because it's neoliberal state, led by a populist who has quite a big support in dictatorial powers, and the whole Rada supports him. They promote the most neoliberal reforms. So all social security mostly becoming decreased, and what is existing one is specifically orientated towards military. So or rich people who can pay, of course. So communities like LGBTQ, I have some friends who cannot get papers for transition, for instance, because military has this transphobic policy to force everyone goes in front for MTFs. It has a very strict politics. Sometimes nationalists and police collaborates with them because it's the way how they can find people, and like, well, also for them front. You also must remember about the TSK movement, which is basically a state enforcing mobilization. So as you can see, state not just in mood to help homeless people. If it could, it probably do worse for them, like basically either let them die or force them to frontline right now. It's very unfortunate to reality of this. That's it.
Okay, thank you. If I can have another question, I just encourage everyone to look in the chat. Patrick put most of the put the photos of the actions of Street.Aid.Daily. the email of the organization as well, but I'll put the Instagram also if you wanna see their work. I have another question which is linked to my personal experience. I was in Ukraine last year during the war, but I've been to Ukraine many times in my life before. But what I saw last time was actually, and it looks like Kostya has the same sees the same things as when I was in Kiev, but I've so many homeless people. I've never seen so many homeless people in Ukraine before. Doesn't mean that they weren't, but it wasn't so visible, I would say. And you say rightly so. I think you mentioned the soldiers and their problems with PSD. But my question is, do this also have anything to do with like internally displaced people in Ukraine? So you mentioned about the housing crisis. So if some of these people end up in the streets?
Yeah, a huge problem here in Ukraine is that we don't really have a lot of research about homelessness, but there was recently a study that showed that every 1 in 4 people, homeless people, is an internally displaced person. So yeah, that's like, I think 22% the number is. Yeah, so the issue is pretty huge with that, because again, the government fails to provide housing to internally displaced people, like temporary housing, usually mobile homes, and yeah, people either go back to where they came from or end up on the street. Not a lot of people are able to find like a new job and a new housing. Yeah, that's sadly the situation currently.
Thanks. Okay. Any other questions? Any other comments? We really encourage everyone to, you have we have a guest working with really interesting issues. So if you have any questions, please. You. Oh, Giuseppe, please.
Yeah, yes. So one question is, do these homeless people try sometimes to make themselves heard from the institution, from the municipality or other state or other institution organizing meeting or something like like this? One question. Second question, I have to say that the problem of housing is widespread in all Europe, also in Italy. But the problem of homelessness is not so acute, but there is really a huge difficulty to young people to rent houses. There are no building of affordable houses. In Italy, the last building of affordable houses from the part of financed by the state was at the end of the 50s and the beginning of the 60s, the so-called case popolari, popular house. So I think that is very important that this problem is recognized as one of the problems of all Europe, of course, and Ukraine is particularly important, particularly great. Yes. And that's all.
Yeah, so the question is if the homeless people are organizing themselves and doing some kind of actions, yeah, in Odessa.
Action, yes.
Yeah, to answer that question is, yeah, it's very hard for homeless people to get to people in positions of power to actually to speak to them. So I don't know of any instances, but there are like volunteers, other volunteers in Odessa that work with homeless people, and they are in constant connection with mayor, with people that are responsible for providing social services to the homeless people. Yeah, basically, there are a few people that function as the representatives for homeless people, but it's like 3 people maybe in the whole city. Yeah, I don't think there are instances of homeless people organizing themselves. Yeah, to somehow to come to the people in position of power to, like, I don't know, try to solve their problems. Yeah, I don't know of any instances of that, but I guess that's one of the points of our activity, is to find the ways to help homeless people organize themselves. Yeah, we still didn't find those ways, but that's one of our goals, is to kind of not always provide them with help, but trying to find a way to organize them around the problem. Because here homelessness, even among homeless people, is not understood as a housing problem. Like, nobody here in the country talks about homelessness as a housing problem. Everybody talks about homelessness as a moral failure. So person ended up on the street not because of the rent market, but because he is a failed individual. Like, he did something wrong and he ended up on the street because he deserves it. So, like, yeah, I think to break this barrier, to change the understanding of homelessness, is like the first step that we're trying to take. Yeah.
Thank you. I think it's a very widespread Eastern European idea, I'm guessing, because we have the same situation. Dick, please.
Well, just following on from that, so I take it that there's no movement to occupy empty housing, no Ocupa movement, which has been very strong here in Spain, or is there just not empty housing? Could you comment on that? Is there any chance that there would be a movement to occupy empty housing?
That's also a very good question. Yeah, there is actually a lot of empty housing, like a lot of it. Like apartments sitting empty for years because their owners left the country since the beginning of the war, for example. Yeah, there is a lot of that. No, there is no movement. There are individual instances where we as an organization, we helped homeless people occupy buildings. Like, yeah, the problem is that a lot of homeless people find it unsafe to live in empty buildings because of the harassment from the police, for example. Because they are basically open to the violence in those like empty buildings. So not a lot of them squat buildings, but there was a few instances where we helped people squat the empty properties. Yeah, as an organization.
Thank you. I have one question, and if anyone else, just raise your hands, guys. what just came to my mind, because any of us is going to relate to the country he's living in, so we can, you know, exchange our ideas about it. But I was thinking, how does the situation of the homeless LGBTQ plus people looks like? Because is there any you work in Odessa, so you know the Odessa situation. Probably you might not know all the Ukrainian situation, but maybe you can comment on that. Because, for example, in Poland, there was, you know, years back, no one talked about this specific group as, you know, of homeless people. Now some organizations are focused, some LGBTQ organizations, but also, you know, groups helping with general homelessness problem, or tenants organizations are, you know, what is done, at least in big cities, is like hostels for specifically for LGBTQ people. Can you comment on that in general in Ukraine, or specific in Odessa, if you know anything that related to that?
Basically, the situation here is the same, I guess, as it was in Poland a few years ago. Yeah, there is no really like any government officials talking about LGBT homelessness. Yeah, I think we are the first organization that started talking about it in Ukraine as a phenomenon. There are LGBT organizations that help homeless people, LGBT plus homeless people, but yeah, that's not like very widespread strategy. We don't have a shelter specifically for LGBT plus people. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Now, please.
I can say that question not quite correct. There existed shelters in Kiev, as there are some LGBT organizations who helps with homeless representative LGBT community. There is two things, like first of all, yes, it doesn't talk about within etc. Second, well, if you mention about nationalist and far right, they tend to co-opt with organizations, and the organization co-opt with each other. So I have pretty nasty experience from some friends with these people who can enforce for you very nasty life. For instance, don't allow you go to shelter, don't allow you to transition, etc., because they disliked you or you find not patriotic enough. So, Kostya, is issue kind of hard to explain, because many people would assume like, oh yeah, like it's showing like the castrated session. No, it's because like it's situation in Ukraine, like with Kostya is probably in Odessa, as I know, because I know David and other people, probably Kostya connect, they were kind of on the left side in Odessa. But in other part of country, if you met such question, people can say, yes, we have LGBT people, but only if they are patriotic and only they speak in particular way, support something or something. If you have conflict with them, you can have a very nasty situation, including reporting to the police.
Okay, thank you. Okay, guys, anyone else? Any questions? Any comments? I don't see anyone.
Well,
oh yeah, Patrick.
no, I think if the question we can end, because Kostya, we take time to Kostya. What I want to say is that I put in chat an interview of Street.Aid.Daily in English. I put the link to the video with the English, French, and Spanish subtitle. I put Street.Aid.Daily, and it's very good video from comments. And you have also the email address of Street.Aid.Daily. You can take contact with them. In any case, in Yonsu, Kostya, we will follow your activity and we stay in contact, because we don't give up. I can say, Street.Aid.Daily, we are going to follow your activity and to try to support you as we can in future. But thank you very much, because I think I repeat myself, but I think it's very interesting your activity because you have various field on activities from homeless, LGBT, plus art, sport, even cooking, and so on. And I think it's very interesting.
Thank you very much, Kostya, for being with us. If you have any final words, the floor is yours. Yeah, I'll just.
Yeah, I just wanted to thank everyone for very thoughtful questions, and thank you for listening to me and learning about our work. I hope I gave good answers to your questions. Yeah, and I'm looking forward to talking more in the future with you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think, as I said at the beginning of this meeting, that it's going to be a series of meetings with different organizations from Ukraine working on various issues that are interesting for us as leftists. And I think that doing some kind of fundraising for all of the groups we're going to host is a good idea in the future. So including Street.Daily. So I think we'll think about that in the future, in the near future, I hope. Yeah, and I thank everyone for being with us today. Thanks for the questions, for the comments. We will put the recording in the coming days on our social media. And thanks again. Thanks for Patrick for helping organizing this and being in charge of today's meeting. And thanks again, Kostya, for being with us. Thank you very much. Thank you, guys.